Hey there, welcome to this week's practice tips video. Before you do anything else, make sure you go watch the original YouTube video here that this one is based on, and then make sure you also download the PDF that goes along with this. So what I wanted to talk about in this video, just as a very quick little wrap up of the YouTube lesson, we basically talked about why the pentatonic scale is so magical. It gets used all the time. It's so versatile. It always works. It's also so easy to play, being a 2-note per string scale. We all love it, right? Especially as guitar players, but this goes beyond just guitar too. A lot of musicians that play other instruments love the pentatonic scale as well. It's used a ton in popular music. So, but these were kind of the two main things that when I learned them, they truly blew my mind. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say that learning these things was like a crazy moment for me. I think the one caveat is just that diminished chord issue where if you try and line the notes up with the diminished chord, so like play in C major, when we get to that B diminished, if we tried to play like a B pentatonic, right? Because it's not a major chord or a minor chord, it's a diminished chord. All of a sudden we introduce notes that we don't want in there. So we could try and play like an altered version of the pentatonic to compensate for that. But I think it's best to just leave it out. You're not really going to play it as like a primary chord in most chord progressions, at least. You will play other diminished chords probably, but not as in that function. So that's why it doesn't quite work there. And then the same would go for the second part of the lesson when we talked about modes and stuff. There is a mode based on that diminished chord, because the modes do actually come from the chords, right? Because it was like 3 major, 3 minor, just like how there are 3 major chords, 3 minor chords in a key and 1 diminished. There are 3 major modes, 3 minor modes, and 1 weird mode called Locrian. And Locrian is very weird. It does get used in some different types of music for sure. But it has a very dissonant sound, very intentionally dissonant sound. And again, the concepts here with the pentatonic notes kind of falls apart. So it would be missing one of those pentatonic notes, which doesn't follow through with the concept. So that's why that's left out. Now, what I wanted to kind of bring up here, as far as practicing this stuff, it's more of like, oh, this aha moment of how the pentatonic scale works as an exoskeleton for everything, right? When we learn the home bass, when we learn anything that you're soloing with, you're gonna base it. I like to base it around that basic position 1 pentatonic shape, knowing that I can use that to build my regular major scale, my regular minor scale, but then also all those modal scales is amazing. It's very freeing because it feels like instead of me relearning something from the ground up, I've got like this foundation that I can build it on top of, which I think is really awesome. And if you expanded into other pentatonic positions, you would be able to do the same thing. So the pentatonic would stay consistent in those other positions with all those modal scales. Now, where this kind of does become confusing, depending on how you've learned modes, and this is, again, modes are one of those things that it's a little more advanced, and it's also a little bit overvalued by people who are learning and not so much by people who are actually playing, because you're not using modes a ton in your playing. Most music you're listening to is not using modes that much, at least like not beyond Ionian and Aeolian, so major and minor. But occasionally they get used. So if this is kind of beyond the scope of your current level, don't worry about it too much. But it is kind of interesting to talk about. So the way that modes work is they essentially alter the major scale, right? So because a C major scale and let's say a C minor scale, or let's go to stay on the major mode. So if we go C major scale and a C Lydian scale, well, they have slightly different notes, so they have slightly different sounds, right? Well, if you continue that into the minor mode, so instead of going, oh, I'm going to flip now to A Aeolian, A Dorian, A Phrygian, and I just stayed on the C and I went C Aeolian, right? So a C minor, C Dorian, C Phrygian, it kind of makes this concept also not work quite as well, which is why we need to see them as major modes and minor modes, because that's how they would apply to this concept. Now, Another cool thing about modes is just like how we had relative major and relative minor, right? So in C major, we have C major, and if we started it from the sixth note, we'd have A minor. They're the same scale, just starting at a different point. And because they start at different points, they have different sounds. Well, this is also true of our major and minor modes, which is really cool. So when we get to Lydian, for example, our C Lydian actually has the exact same notes in it as a Dorian. The same notes. You'll see that F sharp is the one note that stands out, and they're the exact same. They're just starting at different points. And the same thing goes for Phrygian and Mixolydian. The same thing. And so what that means is they're essentially, now they're not the same scale in the sense of how they would function, but as far as the shapes that you would learn, right, they become the same. So it helps you kind of double up how quickly you can learn those modes if there's something that you want to get into. I realize this is a bit of a ramble and more kind of teetering on the point of advanced. So don't worry about it too much. It's more of just, oh, these things are more digestible. They are not so far beyond my reach than maybe you thought they might have been. That's kind of the idea that I want to drive home here. So what I would recommend as far as practicing the stuff we talked about, practicing it is just as simple as using the pentatonic shifts. So when you're playing along to a track, this is what the first kind of main concept was of the video. When you're playing along to a track, try throwing in a pentatonic scale that matches the chord rather than just sticking to the key. Now, I'm somebody who most of my playing, I'm sticking to the key. I'm playing it safe because I like the sound of that. I find it to be more melodic. But every once in a while, especially if you're going to sit on a certain chord for a little bit longer, just try that pentatonic scale. So if you're in the key of C major, like we were for this lesson, and you hit a G major chord, try the G major pentatonic and see how it sounds. Because the notes will work. They will all work. As long as you don't try and turn it into a G major scale where all of a sudden you introduce, it's an F sharp would be the note that you'd introduce, and all of a sudden it would go, oh, that's a little funky. As long as you're not doing that, it's going to totally work. So that would be kind of the best way to practice it, is maybe just incorporate over one chord. Don't try and do it throughout an entire song where you're shifting over every chord. It kind of becomes too much. So yeah, that's basically all I wanted to cover in this follow-up video. If you have any questions or you want me to expand on this topic a little further, get a little deeper into modes and other things like that, you can feel free to let me know below this video. Other than that, I think I don't have much else to say. I hope you have a great week. I hope you have a great weekend whenever you're watching this, and I'll see you very soon.